again. We all got our blankets. And our teddies. And we're ready again for chapter 10. The next morning, Jenna awoke to a flurry of activity. Everyone was packing their things into bags, with added food, of course. Jenna was lucky in that she didn't have anything to pack. Her extra clothes had been taken to the ship the night before. They all made a walk to the docks. There was a lot of laughter, shaking hands, the occasional joking insult thrown across the group. Smithy was in the lead, still being unsociable, but his step seemed a lot lighter than usual. Perhaps Jenna's song had made a difference. The morning was spent readying the ship for launch, tightening ropes, checking sails, and a few good pulls on the new mast just to ensure it was strong enough. They all watched as a storm rolled in. As it approached the docks, Jenna heard a whirring start. It was the motors Caleb had talked about. She'd never noticed them before. As the cloud came beneath the ship, it started bobbing. She hadn't seen the captain yet, but she heard his voice loud and clear from the stern. "Wave goodbye, folks. This is a long storm." As she turned, he looked down at her and smiled. He pointed to a side where she turned to find Smithy was stood. "I've got some jobs for you. Can't have crew doing nothing. Cook needs some help for now, down in the galley. I'll be down later with more jobs." Jenna nodded happily and ran down into the galley. Down there, she learned how to peel potatoes and prepare a large feast of mash and sausages with lashings of gravy. She spent the afternoon being taught by Smithy how to repair a torn sail and the proper way to tie a knot. By evening, she was exhausted. She joined the crew in a meal of sandwiches and juice. The rest of the crew pulled out decks of cards and sets of dice. Jenna watched for a while before falling asleep on some sacks in the corner. It felt good to have learnt so much and to have made friends with so many of the crew along the way. She was woken by a hand on her shoulder. Everyone else must have been asleep, it was so quiet. As she opened her eyes, she saw Smithy knelt over her holding a lamp. He didn't say a word, just motioned with his hand for her to follow him. Jenna was still half asleep but followed him, regardless. She probably should go to her own bed. Instead of going down the corridor, he beckoned her up the stairs onto the deck. Jenna was truly confused, but figured she could trust the bosun by now. As they got near the top, he waited and covered her eyes with his hands as she got by him. "What I'm about to show you is something incredible. Those born up here don't appreciate this enough." He began walking her forward until they were stood at the front of the ship. When he removed his hands, Jenna was captivated. What she saw was the most beautiful thing she could ever have imagined. Below was the black clouds gently rumbling, with flashing of lightning shooting into the ship's bottom, being absorbed by the many wires running along. Above that was the clearest night sky she had ever seen. The stars shone brighter than ever before, and the moon had never looked so big. She heard Smithy speak from behind her, but wasn't startled. "There's no light pollution up here, and we're above the clouds. Everyone accepts it as normal here, but I knew you'd appreciate it as much as I do." Jenna didn't turn around, she just nodded and spoke to the sky. "It's so beautiful. How could anyone ignore this? I can see everything so clearly, it makes me feel so small." "Really? I always thought it made me feel so big, to be able to see such a sight that all of our world misses out on. I'll leave you to enjoy this night. I'll be at the back of the ship if you need me." She heard him walk away and stood looking out into the endless stars. At one point she thought she heard drums, but after a few minutes it disappeared. Must have been in her mind. She must have fallen asleep at some point, because she woke up on the floor to the sound of pulleys and feet pounding on the deck. Strangely though, no one was speaking. As she stood up, rubbing her eyes, she caught sight of old Billy. He looked straight at her and put his finger to his lips. He looked terrified. In fact, everyone did. Jenna was trying to work out what was going on when she heard the drums again. As they got louder and closer, the ship started to sink lower, falling into the cloud. Old Billy ran to her and pulled her by the hand towards the galley. Once inside, he whispered very quietly to her, his voice shaking. "Stay quiet, young 'un. That sound is a savage's ship. They hold no mercy, just cannons and anger." Everyone was huddled close as they all listened to the drums grow closer. They got so close, Jenna felt she could hear the drums in her head. When they finally began to quieten and grow more distant, there was a huge sigh of relief from all the crew. Even the ship seemed to sigh. Then Jenna realized it wasn't a sigh, but the electric motors warming up and raising them above the clouds once more. Old Billy pushed the door open carefully. Outside was a gorgeous sunny day, but the ship was soaking wet from the cloud. Old Billy looked back at the huddle of people and spoke in hushed tones. "All right, all hands on deck for clean-up. For Galatia's sake, keep it down." As the crew walked past and began mopping up the water, Jenna pulled on Billy's sleeve. "What was all that about? Why are we hiding?" When he answered, his voice shook. He was truly afraid of what they'd hidden from. "Savages, miss. They still use the old cannonballs. All they care about is the food. They destroy any ship they encounter. Even the Centurion hides from them. The drums are a useful warning, but they don't always play them. Just hope you never have to encounter them. I lost some good friends to savages. They have no mercy and no honor. They'll tear a ship apart just for a loaf of bread. It wasn't always this way, you know. There used to be order and safety from such things." Jenna couldn't believe her ears. Even these brave men with their fast ship had something to be afraid of. She looked through the door, then decided she should muck in. She grabbed a mop and bucket and started cleaning the deck. As they were finishing up, the captain retreated to his cabin briefly, returning the cups of juice and the salt dish. "Drink up, folks. Just pray they were passing through," he said with a broad smile. They all took a glass and sat, enjoying the breeze. Jenna looked across to see Captain Jones looking over a page of paper with a serious look on his face. After a moment, he stood and walked over to the hole in the deck with the stairs. He called out, loud and clear, "Master McDade, can I see you a moment? It's about the manifest." A head appeared from the dark beneath the deck. Caleb was still dripping head to toe. "And what, may I ask, is so urgent? I'm still clearing the water from my lab after you dived." "I'm just curious as to why, on my ship, we have 10 buckets, 10 varnish brushes, and 300 pairs of shoes." "Oh, that! Not to worry. There's a reason for it. I've worked out we only need the wires exposed along the bottom of the ship." "Oh, right." "Nope, you've lost me. What's your point?" "We can melt the soles of the shoes and paint the ship's hull in rubber. It would make us impervious to lightning altogether." "That's amazing. Why didn't you say something while we were in dock?" "I didn't work it out until the last morning." He bowed his head to Jenna. "You, young lady, have just made things much easier." Jenna beamed at his comment. Later that day, the smell of hot rubber overpowered the ship. Caleb had wasted no time in separating and melting the soles. He was soon carrying up buckets and brushes, grabbing whatever passing crew, and sending them harnessed over the rails to paint the ship in its new coat.